I love going to the thrift store to look for things to upcycle, and in today's video I'm gonna share my best thrifting tips for how to shop fabric to upcycle at the thrift store. If you want to learn more, then keep on watching. Hi, my name is Matilda and welcome back to Miss Matti. And in today's video I will share with you my best tips for how to shop for fabric to upcycle. First, before I share what to do, let's get to some hot takes on what not to do. So I have been made aware of two complaints when it comes to upcycling, and I want to bring them both to your attention, and I'm really looking forward to hear your take on this in the comments down below. Complaint number one is to buy a size 24 when you are a size 2. So I just want to let you know that I have never been plus size myself. This is a complaint that has been brought forward to me by women that are plus size or have been plus size. One thing that many plus size people are complaining about when it comes to thrifting is how hard it is to find anything in their size. So I can really empathize why it is upsetting to see someone that is a size 2 finding a garment in your size and upcycling it. It's hard to know where to draw the line. Often when we're upcycling, we take a bigger garment and turn it into a slightly smaller garment. That's the nature of a lot of upcycling. But if you are a size 2, you have plenty of other sizes that there is a lot of in the thrift store that you can upcycle with instead. So another thing we can do if we buy bigger garments is to ask ourselves, is there a lot of similar items in similar sizes available? For example, I find men's shirts a really good item to upcycle. There is like aisles and aisles of men's shirts, and also it's one of those items that I hear so many people complain about. I changed careers, so what to do with all the shirts I used to wear in my corporate job? Or my husband retired or passed away. What shall I do with all these men's shirts? So that's an item that I do not think there is a harm in to buy in bigger sizes because there's so much of it. But if you find a sort of quite modern and trendy piece in a bigger size, and you can see that there is maybe not that many items in that size, maybe you can consider leaving that piece and find another piece instead. That's my take on it. I would love to hear yours. Hot take number 2, quilt jacket. If you watch my fabric scrap busting idea video, you know I love a good quilted jacket. And I have seen people upcycling old quilts into these jackets. It's not my thing. I want to create a whole patchwork and everything. That's just me. I'm very particular about the design that I want to make, and also, I've always been like that when it comes to textiles. That's probably why I became a knitwear designer. Anyway, it came to my attention that some quilters are pretty upset about this quilt jacket trend. And one quilter here on YouTube named Marifont made a whole video about it, which I will link to down in the description box down below, and I highly recommend you to check it out. So I'm personally a little bit on the fence with this, and I will explain why. When I watched the video from Mary, I can really understand why it's upsetting to a lot of quilters, because I only seen a couple of individuals making a nice quilted jacket with a quilt that they have inherited or already owned, but apparently there's a lot of sellers on Etsy, etc. that are jumping onto this quilt jacket trend, and this is where I got personally really upset myself. So Mary shows some print screens from some people's Instagram accounts with blurred out faces and names, and people had somehow sourced all these vintage quilts. They were gonna cut up and make into all random items, including jackets. And I just asked myself, like, have I ever seen a vintage quilt in a thrift store? And I cannot think I ever have. I've only ever seen like an 80s or 90s Walmart quilt, and I don't think anyone is complaining about if you upcycling those quilts, but I have never seen a handmade vintage quilt in a thrift store ever. Which made me ask, is this actually a textile waste problem? So my take is that if you are an individual that uses one quilt, I don't see that as a massive problem. But what I do take an issue with is if you are a company that specializes in upcycling and you are buying up all these beautiful vintage quilts to turn into a quilted jacket, which is a trend, by the way. Vintage quilts are classic pieces. They will always be loved and appreciated. And as a company that focuses on upcycling, I do think you have a bigger responsibility on how you are sourcing your materials, and you also have a bigger impact and a bigger ability to actually address real textile waste. So I would love to hear from you. Do you think it's okay to upcycle vintage handmade quilts or not? My tip is to always hit this thrift store with a plan. I always have a wish list on my phone with what I'm looking for at the moment, and that really helps me to stay focused. And I often thrift for a specific material or for a specific garment. For example, when I was looking for the blazer that I wanted to upcycle into a blazer dress, I was looking for a design that was similar to the inspiration and a blazer that was long enough to be turned into a dress. However, when I was hunting for shirts for my zero waste refashion that I did with Evelyn Wood, I was more looking for materials that I like and garment details that I liked because I knew I had to use it all. It always helps to have some sort of focus to what I'm looking for, especially when I'm in a big thrift store. For example, when I recently went to Value Village to look for caps, I spent extra time and attention at that aisle, whereas if I was looking at everything, I might just get overwhelmed and miss some really great items. I have heard that around 70% of garments that are donated to thrift stores do not sell. So I try to look as much as possible for the items that I suspect would not sell as is. So when I do source materials to upcycle, I try to go for the outdated stuff, things of good quality materials, unusual prints, etc. As well as I try to look for items there is a lot of in the thrift store, like men's shirts, t-shirts and jeans. So I try to leave behind items that I can see someone buying off the rack as is. For example, very on trend items or modern pieces like a matching suit with a modern fit in a very good quality. I've seen a couple of those at the thrift store, and I always try to leave those suits behind because I can see that someone who might not have a lot of money, they can buy that piece for a wedding, for a funeral, or a job interview. I last year thrifted this purple blazer in the thrift store. It's on a beautiful wool material. I really love this color, but the fit is a bit strange because it has the 80s shoulder pads and it's quite a straight fit, and it has this belt that you need to tie around the waist, and it has a lot of potential, but it's not really the right fit. It looks a bit strange on as is. I really want to refashion this one, but I'm a bit stuck with ideas, so feel free to leave me a comment down below and tell me what you think I should do with this blazer. Another example is this blue paisley shirt. I actually thrifted it a couple of weeks ago because I love the fabric. I think it's beautiful. But it has this, I don't know if you can see, bleach stain here. And then for some weird reason, it's cut here as well, at the bottom of the bottom plaque. Really weird. But this doesn't matter to me because I'm not planning to use the bottom plaque. This area I can just cut away or utilize in design. Not that I know how I would do that, but that's an option too. I have no idea what I'm gonna make of this yet. I just love the fabric, that's why I got it. We'll see. Also, when you're thrifting items to upcycle, I would really encourage you to think potential rather than how it currently looks. fabrics. Do you like a color, but you do not like the rest of the garment? Do you like the material? Do you like certain garment details, but others are just really weird? No problem, you can always change that. So when you're thrifting, it is really important to look at the construction of the garment. Will you have a lot of materials to work with or not? Fewer details and simple designs often allow you to have more materials to work with unless you plan to utilize the existing garment details. For example, a simple gathered skirt or dress gives you way more material to work with than a top with a lot of seams and details. And of course, to look at the fiber content, and if you're looking for stretch fabrics, how much does these fabrics stretch? Both the fiber content and the stretch amount will really guide you what would be suitable to make out of this piece. Another thing to consider when you are in the thrift store is, can I dye this garment? Just make sure that you pay attention to the fiber content and that it's suitable for the dye that you use. Bigger to smaller is almost always easier, but you can combine several garments into one as well. This is something that is worth considering already when you are in the thrift store. Did you find a shirt you really like? Maybe you can find a skirt that works really well with this shirt and you can make a shirt dress. There are these very obvious upcycles where you can see two garments being mashed together, and while I think often they're really fun and cool ideas, it's not really the vibe that I want to go for. Also, with my blazer dress that is currently work in progress, it's slowly coming together finally. Besides using an oversized men's blazer, I also thrifted an evening dress. I used that material from the evening dress and created a pleated skirt. And to create a big enough piece to pleat, I combined several sections of that dress together. And this is another way on how you can combine several garments into one, as well as utilize as much of the upcycled material as possible. So are there any garment red flags that you should look out for when you're thrifting? Yeah, I would say there is a few things. You should really make sure that the fabric is of good enough quality, and if you're not sure how to identify a good quality fabric, try to educate yourself on different materials and how to spot a good quality fabric. And when you're checking your garment, if it's of good enough quality, it's okay if some seams are unraveling or if some seams are worn out, if you're not gonna use that in your final design. But what you want to look out for is materials that have worn out and thinning areas, and this you can do by holding the fabric up towards the light. Of course, you can upcycle with thinning and worn out fabrics. Either you exclude that worn out area or you're strengthening it with canter stitching, for example. Also look at the garment, does it have any holes or stains that you need to work around? You can of course exclude that area from your final design, or you can use embroidery or applique to cover up the stain or hole. For example, if I wanted to use the button plaque for the paisley shirt, I would not be able to use the whole button plaque. Another thing to check is if the garment is stinky. You may or you may not get out those smells. It depends totally on what it is. I remember in the beginning of the year, I bought this really lovely polo neck from Value Village. Not to upcycle, but just to wear as is. It was smelling so strongly of fabric softener, and I had to soak it in vinegar and water for a couple of hours, wash it a couple of times to get that out. Eventually I did, but that's also something to bear in mind, especially also with things like cigarette smoke, cooking smells and other things. Do you know how to get those smells out? And would you be okay if you bought the garment, tried to get the smell out, but you didn't succeed? So recently I got a bit obsessed with making dad caps, and if you watched my fabric busting idea video, you most likely know why. And if you ever have tried to source materials for making caps, you might know that it can be hard to find and or expensive. And because I was gonna upcycle parts of the caps, I was specifically looking for things that I didn't think most people would like to buy, like freebies or caps from workplaces that I don't think most people would like to wear unless that is their place of work. And also I noticed last time that I went thrifting that these caps were way cheaper than, for example, a cap with a sports team or a sports brand or other branded design. And also look for good garment details such as zippers, buttons, etc. Just look at this jacket here. It is some cheap plastic material that I do not like at all, but the buttons are really cute. I often also find it really hard to source long metal zippers in the fabric store, so that's another item that I'm looking for when I'm thrifting, as you can find them cheaper as well as with a wider variety. Another item that I find really hard to source is cuffs for sweatshirts and sweatpants. I often find that in my local area or online that there are in such a limited amount of colors and often very expensive. And in the thrift store, yeah, I have way more options. Do not only look at the garment section. Sheets are a really popular item to upcycle with, and low quality sheets are great to use for mock-ups. You can also use curtains, table runners, and blankets to upcycle with. Recently, when I went to Value Village, I found this grey IKEA blanket. I also have one of these myself in red, and this blanket reminded me that with Wendy made a Chanel-inspired suit that Jenny from Blackpink had been wearing from a green version of the same blanket. And that's a great example of how you can take an inexpensive thrifted IKEA blanket and turn it into something luxurious. And also do not forget to check out the fabric, yarn and craft section at your thrift store if your thrift store has one of these. I actually went the other day and I found this massive piece. I do not know what to do with it, but maybe you can use it for lining or something, we'll see. And then I found this black Finwell corduroy, and if you have watched my corduroy pant video, you know that I haven't had the easiest time to find good quality corduroy near me, so I was pretty excited to find this. Also, do not forget to subscribe if you want more content just like this. I'm currently working on at least 3 upcycles, and if you do not want to miss those videos, do not forget to hit the subscribe button and hit the notification bell so you will be notified when I'm uploading those videos. Do not forget to look at accessories such as purses, belts and bags. Often the hardware on these items are really unique and it will be hard and expensive to try to source. Scarves are another item that is great to look for in the thrift store when you're planning to upcycle, because they come in a wide variety of colors, prints and materials. And you can often be lucky and find big scarves with a lot of materials, but I also love when you are combining several silk scarves into one skirt or a dress. I think you can have a lot of fun with scarves. Many people tell me that it's really good to go to the bins like Goodwill Outlet to source materials for upcycling. I have never been, but I've heard really good stuff about it, that you can find really good materials for fraction of the price. I personally love looking at the sales section in my local thrift stores. I also like the idea, especially when I'm upcycling, to go for items that haven't sold, and I think that's why the idea of going to the bins appealed to me. I really should make an effort to go soon. Comment down below and let me know your best tips for thrifting items to upcycle. If you found this video helpful, give it a thumbs up, and if you like this video, you most likely will like this video here with my upcycle tips and tricks. So go and check that video out if you haven't already, and until next time, bye!